Just this past week, I had an opportunity to speak with some parents of a teenage boy preparing to enter high school. Now, as a new parent, I remain blissfully unaware of the anxieties that parents face when their children become teenagers. But as I discovered, many are the concerns that haunt the minds of parents of adolescents. Keeping up the grades, enjoying extracurriculars, getting into college, just to name a few. But the biggest question that these parents had, the fear that trumped all others, was, will my child make the right type of friends in school? Will he or she make friends that reinforce the values that we taught him? Or will they find friends that bring them to harm? Now I ask, since I don't have a whole lot of experience here, have any of you ever asked that question? Okay, I see a few heads going up and down. Now our Torah portion this week, Vayikra, doesn't necessarily set us upon a journey into parental advice. Rather, it begins us on a journey into the laws of the ancient Israelite priesthood and its forms of worship, which comprise the bulk of the third book in our Torah, the book of Leviticus. And that exploration begins with a scintillating introduction into the world of ritual sacrifice. Now, while the tangible benefits of burnt offerings, thanksgiving offerings, goodwill offerings, purgation offerings, and reparation offerings may elude the 21st century parent, there are pertinent messages hidden within this vast compendium of sacrificial details that speak to our anxieties, not just as parents, but also as partners and as human beings. One such message rests within the taxonomy of sacrifices designed to maintain the moral and spiritual fabric of the Israelite community. A taxonomy that authorizes distinct offerings for the individual, the priest, the communal leader, or the community who is guilty of a transgression against divine law, as well as a reparation offering designed to restore the moral and spiritual balance once a transgression has successfully been purged. And if you understand what that means, I have a job for you at Wise School. But in other words, the Torah treats any instance of wrongdoing like an infection, one that has to be eradicated at the source, lest it spread. Therefore, priests who are guilty of some sort of misdeed have to go through a very rigorous purgation offering, similar to the cleaning a physician might undergo after she's finished in the surgery room. Meanwhile, individuals must also purge themselves of any sinful bacteria they accumulate before they're allowed to participate in the community, because you wouldn't want to spread all that sin to somebody else. And sometimes entire communities have to be quarantined, lest their moral contagion affect the surrounding environs. And then, once that's done, we conclude the process with a sacrifice of reparation, a suture, if you will, to repair the wound caused by the moral or spiritual infection. Now, while it might seem awfully quaint to describe moral and spiritual fitness in the terms of our ancestors, there's a wisdom in the way our ancestors approached moral and spiritual degradation as some sort of potent infection. In fact, those among us who have ever told someone, or as in my case, have been told, you're only as good as the company you keep, are beneficiaries of our ancestors' approach. Parents obsess over their children's friends because parents know that the people we associate with have a profound influence upon us. And when that influence lacks moral or spiritual fidelity, we also know that that influence spreads, regardless of our best intentions as parents, as business people, or as community or civic leaders. But it's easy for us to tell children to be more selective about the kids they hang out with. It's much harder, however, to follow our own advice. In this increasingly interconnected world, one that puts people and places and information right at our fingertips like never before, it's fair to ask the question, what company do we really keep? Who shows up in our Facebook feeds? What magazines arrive at our door? What television shows are sitting on our DVRs? What movie stubs are sitting in the trash can? What websites lurk in the background of our computer's history banks? Now, we all have leisurely pursuits that may not necessarily reflect the best in us, but our tradition asks us to take stock of the way in which we spend our hours and to remember our advice to our children. We're only as good as the company we keep. And perhaps those pursuits that weaken our moral or spiritual consciousness, or in some cases, deny parents the opportunity to tell their children how to maintain their moral or spiritual consciousness, deserve purgation and reparation. And then when the time comes, we don't need to try and figure out how to tell our kids how not to hang out with the bad influences. All they'll have to do is follow our example. Shabbat Shalom.